In the boundless deserts of North Africa, the scorching air twists violently across the horizon, as if to evaporate all traces of life. This is evolution's ultimate testing ground, where only the coldest and most precise masters of survival endure until the next sunset. Behind a patch of withered shrubs, a pair of amber eyes slowly narrow into vertical slits, locking onto the faintest quiver among the sand and stones hundreds of meters away. This is not a lion commanding the savannah, nor a cheetah swift as the wind. It is an African wildcat, weighing less than 5 kilograms. Despite its small stature, it is one of the most perfect killing machines on Earth. At this very moment, it holds its breath, muscles coiled with tension, every whisker sensing the subtlest vibrations in the air. This tiny creature, known as Felis libica, has refined its physiological structure over millions of years of evolution. They possess a retina capable of absorbing the faintest light, allowing them to see the sharp contours of prey in total darkness. Their paw pads act like the most sophisticated shock absorbers, making every step of their stalk silent. Their auditory system can capture high-frequency ultrasound, the exact frequency at which rodents communicate deep underground. It is hard to imagine that this predator, fighting a brutal battle for survival in the arid wilderness, is the sole common ancestor of the 600 million domestic cats worldwide. From the powerfully patterned Bengal to the luxuriously coated Persian and the exotically pointed Siamese, though they vary wildly in appearance today and live in expensive, climate-controlled apartments deep within their cells, beats the same ancient genetic code from the desert. Over a span of 10,000 years, felines have undergone one of nature's most magnificent transformations. This is more than a physical shift from the wild to the palace. It is an ultimate gambit in survival strategy. Unlike dogs, which were forcibly screened and modified by humans for function, the evolution of the cat is more akin to a brilliant crossover collaboration. They retained the primal instincts of their desert ancestors, while simultaneously learning how to precisely trigger human emotional responses. Today, we will pierce through the mists of 10,000 years to uncover the history of breed evolution buried by wind and sand. We will analyze in depth how these desert predators, through the loneliness of geographic isolation, the randomness of natural mutation, and the fervor of artificial selection in the Victorian era, ultimately branched into the hundreds of miraculous breeds with distinct personalities and appearances we see today. This is a survival game spanning millennia, and a hardcore scientific exploration of the intertwining of genes, history, and civilization. Let us re-examine these predators hiding by our pillows and listen to the unextinguished call of the wild within them. Approximately 10,000 years ago, as Earth's climate underwent a period of violent upheaval, the Fertile Crescent bore witness to the most grandiose transformation in human history, the agricultural revolution. As our ancestors laid down their heavy hunting spears to cultivate the first fields and construct the earliest permanent granaries, an unexpected ecological imbalance emerged. Mountains of stored grain were not only the hope for human survival, but also a paradise for rodents. Thousands of voracious mice flooded these settlements like a rising tide, not only stealing precious rations, but also spreading deadly plagues in dark corners, severely threatening the continuity of early human society. At this critical crossroads of civilization, the African wildcats lingering on the fringes of these settlements, their eyes filled with wariness, sensed an unprecedented opportunity for survival. For these natural-born predators, the rat-infested granaries were no longer a barren wilderness, but an inexhaustible natural hunting ground. At this moment, the trajectory of evolution took a subtle turn. Humans were soon astonished to find that these solitary stalkers possessed a hunting efficiency far superior to any man-made trap. A silent contract of mutual benefit was struck between the two species. Humans began to consciously tolerate these small felines, even providing shelter and scraps of meat, while the cats, in return, transformed into guardians of the granaries, cleansing every shadowy corner with their lethal claws. This symbiotic relationship reached a historical zenith thousands of years later during the era of ancient Egyptian civilization. Amidst the shimmering reflections of the Nile, the status of the cat underwent a magnificent leap from utility to divinity. If you were to walk into an Egyptian temple of that time, you would find the walls covered with feline imagery. They were no longer mere mercenaries of the fields. They were draped in a sacred, inviolable aura. The ancient Egyptians fervently worshipped the goddess Bastet, a deity with the exquisite head of a cat, representing not only the warmth of the home and fertility, but also the guardianship of life and death. Under the laws of the time, harming a cat was considered an unpardonable capital offense, and when a household cat died naturally, the entire family would shave their eyebrows as a sign of deep mourning. However, if we peel back these mysterious religious layers and examine the cat from a cold biological perspective, we find that significant breed differentiation had not yet occurred. Through modern DNA sequencing and skeletal comparisons of thousands of ancient Egyptian cat mummies, scientists have revealed a startling fact. The domestic cats of that era remained highly consistent with their North African desert ancestors in their anatomical structure. They still possessed long, powerful limbs, a pelvis suited for running, and large auditory bullae. The only evolutionary fine-tuning occurred within their coats. To achieve better camouflage against the complex, man-made backgrounds of human settlements, stones, pottery, and shadows, the original mackerel tabby patterns, evolved for the desert, began to undergo subtle genetic mutations. Finer, broken spots, and softer lines began to spread through the feline populations. This was, in fact, an important marker in the history of domestication. When survival pressure decreases, morphological diversity begins to emerge in a species. This primitive yet profound interaction forms the bedrock of the entire evolutionary history of cat breeds. During this stage, cats displayed astonishing evolutionary intelligence. They retained the wild genes for independent hunting, yet psychologically learned to adjust the frequency of their vocalizations to mimic a human infant's cry, precisely triggering human emotional responses. With an almost arrogant elegance, they crossed the threshold of human civilization, moving from the periphery of the wild into the very center of power. This was the first great migration in the evolution of cat breeds and the formal signing of the symbiotic contract between man and feline. In the long centuries to follow, these guardians of the granary would board human merchant ships to embark on a grand voyage to conquer the globe. Call of the wild within them. As the glory of ancient Egypt faded, the shores of the Mediterranean welcomed the age of discovery. Aboard sailing ships laden with spices and gold lurked deadly stowaways, rats. To protect the fresh water and provisions essential for the crew's survival, the cats that once guarded the granaries along the Nile naturally secured a boarding pass to human decks, becoming indispensable living quarantine officers for ocean voyages. Following the routes of merchant ships, these predators from the North African desert began their grand migration to conquer the globe. However, when they left their dry homeland and scattered to corners of the earth with vastly different climates, the invisible hand of nature began to resculpt their genomes. In the bone-chilling cold of the Siberian plains, the rules of survival became extremely brutal. To withstand the freezing temperatures, natural selection mercilessly eliminated short-haired individuals. A recessive gene determining hair length was preserved and magnified here, giving birth to the Siberian forest cat. Not only did their bone structure become extraordinarily robust, but their coats evolved a sophisticated triple-layered structure, a water-repellent outer layer, an insulating middle layer, and a cashmere-like warm undercoat. They even grew thick tufts of fur between their toes, acting as natural snowshoes. On the other side of the globe, in the sweltering heat of Southeast Asia, feline genetics took another extreme path. The Siamese cat showcased one of biology's most astonishing feats: temperature-sensitive albinism. The tyrosinase enzyme in their bodies is only active at the cooler extremities, synthesizing melanin in the ears, nose, and paws, creating their world-renowned color points. To adapt to the tropics, they shed their undercoat, and their large ears, laced with capillaries, became highly efficient natural radiators. These are the natural breeds, shaped by geographic isolation and natural selection. Yet, while cats were adapting wildly across the world, medieval Europe was experiencing a tragic ecological lesson. At that time, the cat's keen night vision and stealth abilities sparked religious panic. They were absurdly branded as symbols of evil and slaughtered en masse. When cats, the apex predators of the cities, were driven to near extinction, the black rat population exploded without its natural enemy, ultimately triggering the Black Death, which claimed tens of millions of lives. It was a ruthless backlash of ecological imbalance. It wasn't until the 18th century that cats gradually cleared their stigma. By this time, having undergone millennia of geographic isolation, cats had evolved into dozens of distinct natural breeds. But this was merely nature's slow, blind experiment. Soon, a feverish genetic storm known as artificial selection was about to sweep in during the Victorian era. In 1871, London's Crystal Palace hosted the first modern cat show in human history, marking the Cambrian explosion of feline evolution. During the Victorian era, with the accumulation of wealth, cats were no longer rat-catching tools in cold granaries. They ascended to become luxurious pets, showcasing their owners' tastes. The slow, blind hand of nature's natural selection was violently replaced by humanity's fervent and highly purposeful artificial selection. Here, for the first time, cats were evaluated not by their hunting prowess, but were placed under the spotlight to be scrutinized against a strict set of breed standards. Artificial selection is, in essence, a genetic hijacking of evolution. In the cruel wilderness, if a cat mutated to have folded ears, extremely short legs, or a flattened snout, it would be swiftly and mercilessly erased by nature due to impaired hearing or breathing difficulties. But in humanity's carefully constructed greenhouse, the pressure of survival was completely eradicated. These physiological defects, fatal in the wild, were perceived by breeders as rare and adorable premium traits. To lock in these rare recessive mutations, breeders resorted to the extremely radical method of inbreeding. Take the world-renowned Persian cat as an example. When initially introduced from the Mediterranean, it was simply a sturdy, ordinary long-haired cat, but Victorian aesthetics heavily favored roundness and neoteny. Over just a few decades, by continually selecting and back-crossing individuals with shorter muzzles, breeders completely transformed the Persian skull morphology. They artificially compressed the feline nasal cavity and altered the jaw's bite angle, ultimately shaping the extreme, flat face we see today. This morphological evolution, involving the complex remodeling of facial bones, might have taken nature hundreds of thousands of years. Humanity accomplished it in a single century. This frantic biological alchemy did not stop there. Breeders isolated the dilute gene, washing away dense melanin to create the ethereal, pure blue coats of the British Shorthair. They even preserved the genetic defect that halted the growth of stiff guard hairs, breeding the Rex cats, covered in curly down and resembling alien creatures. In this crazy era, the feline gene pool, which had freely intermingled, was forcibly partitioned by invisible fences called pedigrees, officially birthing the concept of the purebred cat. While this genetic revolution brought breathtaking spectacles of biological diversity, when the fanatical pursuit of extreme morphology blinded reverence for health, this remodeling of life against the laws of nature quietly planted a ticking time bomb of genetic toll in the shadows. When the spotlight shines on the champion's podium of modern cat shows, we witness the ultimate triumph of human aesthetics. However, beneath the fur of these modern miracles lies a heavy genetic toll. In the pursuit of extreme morphology, humans have compressed the gene pool of purebred cats to a dangerous edge. This obsession with singular appearances has shattered the physiological balance that nature spent millions of years establishing. The most typical tragedy is the Scottish fold, renowned for its cute and innocent look. Those tightly folded ears are, biologically speaking, a dominant genetic mutation known as osteochondrodysplasia. Breeders and consumers only see the unique shape of the head, ignoring that this mutation indiscriminately attacks the cartilage tissue throughout the cat's entire body. As they age, the spines, limbs, and tails of Scottish folds gradually become stiff and deformed. With every step, they endure the excruciating pain of bone friction. Like porcelain dolls with a terminal illness, they spend their lives trapped within their own malformed skeletons. A similar price is paid by breeds with extremely flat faces. The skulls of modern Persians and exotic shorthairs have been artificially compressed to their limits, leaving them born with severe brachycephalic airway obstructive syndrome. Their narrowed nasal passages make even the most basic act of breathing a desperate struggle, while severely shortened tear ducts cause them to weep ceaselessly for life. Furthermore, in the pursuit of ultimate size, the Maine Coon, the world's largest domestic cat breed, has been branded with the genetic stigma of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. To make them grow as massive as lynxes, prolonged inbreeding magnified the hidden dangers of cardiac overload, causing many young Maine Coons to die of sudden heart failure while appearing perfectly healthy. As the dividends of genetics are overdrawn, the modern veterinary community has begun to sound the alarm. Scientists urge that the definition of a breed should not be based solely on the novelty of its appearance. True animal science requires us to confront these cruel biological realities. As we stroke the expensive and fragile purebred cats in our arms, we must reflect: do humans have the right to deprive a species of its fundamental right to breathe freely and run without pain, just to satisfy our own desires? This century-long genetic experiment is forcing us to re-examine the ethical boundaries between humans and animals. From the life and death struggles in the North African deserts to the sacred contracts in the granaries of ancient Egypt, through the global expansion of the Age of Discovery and the genetic reshaping of the Victorian era, the evolutionary history of the cat is a microcosm of human civilization itself. Yet when we quiet our minds and gaze at the softly purring companion in our arms, we discover an awe-inspiring biological truth. Cats have never truly been fully domesticated by us. Unlike domestic dogs, whose survival instincts have been thoroughly reprogrammed, whether they now wear the luxurious long coat of a Persian or the peculiar skin of a Sphinx, deep within their cells flows the aloofness and wildness of the African wildcat from 10,000 years ago. Even living in high-rise city apartments, they still retain the keenest hearing, perfect paw pads, and a lethal pouncing instinct. They simply made a brilliantly strategic choice in a survival game spanning millennia to achieve a symbiosis of souls with humanity. They lowered their defenses against humans, but they never surrendered the key to the wilderness. This is perhaps the most successful and captivating cross-boundary evolution on Earth. In the long years to come, these apex predators that once lurked in the desert will continue to walk with elegant, silent steps, journeying alongside us on this planet as near equals.